So helicopters, aircraft, their maintenance, their ammunition, armored cars, to counter effectively the bandits, they cost money and they cost time for training and adaptation.
All right, that was the question on security situation. But please just let's keep that on hold and then begin by analyzing, the ambience, the atmosphere, and the comportment of that interview. And I'd like to start off with Mr. Femi Adesina.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here, and I say Happy New Year to you and to Nigerians. Yes, this interview, I would say, was calm and measured. And I mentioned it immediately to Siristoba after. I had never even seen the president so much relaxed with the media. The president is somebody who is on his guard when the media is there. Well, with Siristoba, he was quite relaxed, and you see that the interview just, there was a flow, and everything was conversational, and there was no antagonism. It went well. And when an interview is like that, you get more from the person you are interviewing.
Jide Ojo, what did you take out of the interview? I see Lisa talking about the scenario, the comportment, the composure of the president, especially, and of course, the interviewee.
Well, the president has always been a very comported person. He's not somebody that is aggressive, even in the face of storm. He's always a very calm person. So his comportment is nothing unusual. I watched the channels as well as the NTA. I think the president did himself good by talking to Nigerians about where things are, the concerns many Nigerians have, about issue of politics, infrastructure, security, COVID-19. And, when I watched a series yesterday, the president talking about, we are working on COVID-19 vaccine, but we don't want to say, we don't want to let the cat out of the bag here. It tells you of somebody, and I see the president very articulate. He was not agitated. He was not somebody scrambling for what to say. He was speaking from the mind. So I think that's very presidential. Nigerians can disagree with some of his submissions. That's normal, like the issue of state police. Not many Nigerians will want to agree with him. Issue of successor. I've read PDP jumping at him saying he should not talk about any successor. But that's politics. I mean, it's also allowed in a democracy. But on the whole, I think the president did well.
Dr. Kabir.
Yeah, thank you. For me, the fact that one of the criticisms that a lot of, especially from the opposition, have leveled at Mr. President, that he speaks more to foreign media than local media. I think from the beginning of the year to now, the fact that Mr. President has first issued a New Year speech and then granted interview to two local media stations. I think it's a very good way to begin the year in terms of the president's, attempt to reach out to Nigerians and give Nigerians something to think about for the rest of the year. And we're hoping that, the president and his media team will build upon that. It's an election year. There is a lot of trepidation among certain persons within Nigeria. And so that type of reassurance and speech, I think, from the president will go a long way towards giving Nigerians a sense of what direction Mr. President. So on the whole, I think it's a very good development.
Dr. Kabir, keeping tap on that, and let's insist on you a little bit for a while, looking at the excerpt we first had. Let's look at the security situation as being put forward by the president in the interview. And then when we look back to 2015 through this time around, we can see the improvements made. But nonetheless, there are still complaints all over. The menace is all over the place still, even though the assurances given by the president are still very cogent and heavy, has given us more hope that at least in the coming months there's going to be great improvement. What should the Nigerian government be doing differently in this regard?
In a general overview of the president's speech, in today's world, in 2022 as it were, what the world talks about is human security. And so when I talk security, I usually would not just want to look at the physical security. I know in the concluding remarks of Mr. President, he talks about the acquisition of assets. And it's remarkable because frankly, I don't think in the last, especially in the Fourth Republic, we've had any government, any administration that has invested in assets, both for the military as well as the other 24 ministries, departments, and agencies in security like the Buhari administration. And so that's remarkable. That physical component of security where you try to contain the security challenges is very important. But beyond that, the soft approach to security, tackling unemployment, putting in place social investment programs, addressing the issue of poverty, attempting to address the weapons proliferation in the country, improving the delivery of justice, the administration of criminal justice, addressing social grievances. All of those things, to an extent, Mr. President has touched in the speech. And for me, those are the important things. But going forward, what do I hope to see? Three things in particular.
Just Dr. Kabir, just before you give us your hopes and your expectations, let's also escalate that conversation. But I want to just put a hold on the issue of security. My question is to Mr. Femi Adesina. Dr. Kabir mentioned two things in his response to the first, to the ambience and atmosphere surrounding the conduct of that interview. And he talked about insinuations that, Mr. President's preference is for foreign media interviews, and of course the form of communication and all that. I'd like for you to speak to that, and why again was the interview restricted to just some media houses?
Thank you. If I start from the second one, why was it restricted to some media houses? The intention is for Mr. President to speak to the country, and the two media houses chosen for this particular interview have accomplished the purpose. It was not a democratization of media appearances. It was just, the intention was just to communicate. And by the time you choose NTA, which is like the largest network in the country, and you have chosen channels, which is also widely watched, the message has been passed. I'm sure if we did more than those two for now, information overflow will also come again. And the two are just adequate. The last outing we had, it was Arise TV and NTA. So anytime we make these appearances and interventions in the polity, most likely it will be two stations.
So why does the president, not grant interviews? You said whenever he sees the media, he's always on his guard. Yes. Why is that so?
The president also has a history with the media. He has a history with the media. And when we talk, most times he still refers to it. And when I insist on certain things, he says, you are one of them. You are one. That's why you're on their side. That's why you're on their side. But then, as often as we can get him to do this, I'll say he will do it. And he will do more of this as the government winds down. But there's still one part of your question. Yeah. Why does he prefer to talk to foreign media? That's not quite true. It's not quite true. It has not been true in the past 3-4 years, for instance. Yes, in the beginning of the administration, whenever we traveled, we always will insist that we should talk to the media. But it was not just foreign media. any trip, you had NTA there. You had some other local media there. So when he grants interviews, these people are also there. The fact that he grants it on foreign soil could be an issue. Yeah. But that is when we have more time, it's more relaxed. And so each time we went out, we would tell him, let's try and talk to the media. And he would do until noise came that he was always talking to media outside the country. So we had to stop that again. And that was a window shot. Yeah? Where he talks, I believe, does not matter. Because even if he talks to foreign media, the world is a global village now. Anything he says comes back to Nigeria. And when he speaks, even outside, local media are there. NTA is on every trip. Apart from NTA, there are 2 other media houses we take along. They are always part of those interviews.
Okay. Nadabo.
Okay, let's move over to Benin and then get the feel of, or the feeling of Dr. Osaoru Okunzua, who is a public affairs analyst. The president spoke yesterday and the day before yesterday on Charles and, of course, on NTA. Our concern this morning is looking at issues in this interview. What's your general take on the whole interview now before we get down to the specifics?
On a general note, I think celebration of democracy, because I don't think that setting will have happened this time in 1984. And it's also a kind of applause for the president that he's conforming to the details of democracy, talking to the nation directly without equivocation. I really don't think most of the issues he raised are subject to further analysis. They were clear enough, and I don't think they can easily be misunderstood. You could either agree or disagree with him. I think to that extent, our democracy is thriving, and I see that outing as an endorsement of it still.
Let's move on to, the earlier aspect we talked about, talking about the excerpt, especially the one on security, which Dr. Kabir Adam, started talking about. Let's look at it from the point of view of the current situation, and indeed what exactly the government has in stock for us and for all Nigerians in relation to keeping this country safe, the properties and people of this country. Femi Adesina, tell us, the president is very, very much optimistic about bequeathing to Nigerians a better secured country by the time he lives in the next 17 months. And it's still not yet, as good as he may think from the outside, because people in these areas are really feeling the pinch and feeling the pain as it moves on. What informs that optimism?
Yes, there is cause for optimism, really, because you need to compare what had been with what is. As bad as what is, you still can't compare it with what used to be. The things were a lot worse in Nigeria security-wise than now. Even in the recent times, as far back as 2-3 months ago, things were quite very bad. But if you look at the past 4-6 weeks, you know that there is a difference. And things are poised to get better. For instance, the bandits who are troubling the Northwest and infiltrating into North Central have now been declared terrorists. That means that certain kind of armaments can be deployed against them, which was not the case before. Mm-hmm. By the time that is launched against them, you will see what will happen. Mm-hmm. Northeast is fairly under control. There are still what I would call atavistic attacks from time to time. But it didn't used to be so. There was a time that it was a daily affair, hourly affair. Compare then and now. There is a big, big difference. And that has happened. Northeast is virtually stabilized, not completely done, but fairly stabilized. Northwest will come under control. The control is becoming evident. Earlier this week, you see that 2 major troublers of that region have been taken out. And by the time you take out all those elements, you see that peace will return to the country. It doesn't take 17 months to do it. It can even be done before that. You just need to be privy to what happens in the Security Council meetings. The president referred to it. If you know what happens in the Security Council meetings, you will know that this thing will be ended.
Yeah, he has been saying that. He says they spend not less than 4 hours most of the time when they meet, you know, these security chiefs. And given the strength of his military background too, so he's in the know of it.
We will speak to that in the course of our conversation, the hours that the president says he puts into administering the Nigerian project. But again, Kabiru and Jude are here in the studio, so we have the pleasure, proximity of reaching out to them whenever we want. So please, I beg to allow me to go to Benin studio to ask Dr. Okonzua my next question, and that's because you said that the issues raised by Mr. President, or Mr. President's response to the issues put to him may not need further, analysis. But from his response of the security situation, I'd like for you to tell us, or to probably analyze the mood transition and what message that is conveying to Nigerians about the president's feeling, about the security situation. If you watch from the outset, when Cyril started his questioning, the president was very relaxed. I mean, you could see him even smiling. And then the questions, moved on to, the issues of security and the performance of his administration, and the mood changed.
Well, yes. I did say what he said yesterday, we don't need further analysis, because they were very simple and straightforward. And it's credit to him that he spoke straight to his countrymen, even as our president. And with his background as a general of the Nigerian army, a former head of state himself, I think the whole essence was to inspire confidence in all of us, his countrymen. And I think he succeeded in doing that. The kind of progress report, by talking to the two media houses, the NTA and channels, of vital national issues. Well, we are happy he's giving a progress report that tells us the situation in the country is under control. But just like Dr. Kabiru had said, security is not about armamentarium alone. The concept of human security will need to be fully embraced in our country as we pursue the welfare of our citizens. And it's not only the kind of situation we are now, it's not only our armed forces we actually need. We probably will need our diplomats too to turn inwards. We need to actually find out the root causes of these conflicts across the country. So deeper issues need to be dug into so that we can promote a kind of serviceable dialogue about how to move our nation forward, even as we continue the national building project. So the president did well by talking to us. I commend him for that as a citizen of this country. And we want to see a situation where succor is brought to our countrymen, our compatriots in the Northeast, in the Northwest, and so on. And security and sense of belonging across the country, all the issues that are bringing about this insecurity, we need to get to the bottom of them. So as I said a while ago, not only our soldiers, our airmen, and our seamen, we also need our diplomats to help us internally.
And coming back to the studio, just before we take our next excerpt, Jude, his response to events in the Northeast, Northwest, Southeast, and even the NSAS showed a president that's so frustrated by the fact that Nigerians are not appreciating, the efforts put in to really address the situation. Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's what it is. And uneasy lies here that wears the crown. I don't envy Mr. President. Sometimes I ask myself, why do people go into political offices? Because I, as a private citizen, I enjoy more peace than Mr. President. I really don't envy him. Because whatever he does, it's like a judgment. There will be those who will bash him, there will be those who will laud him. And that is, he asked for the job. It wasn't a coronation. So the fact that he asked for the job, it comes with both the asset and liability of being in government. Even Mr. Adesina, I don't envy him. He knows we have had personal discussion around this issue. But truth be told, you see, we don't appreciate our leaders until they leave office, and then you see clearer. The president is a father, is a husband, is a Nigerian. He lives in Nigeria. He's not a diplomat that comes in during Christmas and New Year. He is pained by those deaths. And what further frustration can you have that your own home state is even almost ungovernable? So he's pained, but we don't see that pain because he talks less. He's not a talkative like me. I know I talk a lot. But Mr. President is very measured in his comment. So he wants his action to talk for him. And you know, a tree does not make a forest. The question is, does his lieutenants even believe in his vision? That's another thing. He won't go. I heard the Ethiopian Prime Minister wanted to... Did he lead the forces against the Tigrans? You don't expect a president to go to lead, even though he's commander-in-chief of the armed forces, to now lead the battle against the bandits. The issue is, naturally and normally, even if I were to be the president, I would feel frustrated because the casualty figures that is being churned out on a daily basis is not friendly. And all his investment diplomacy, all the foreign trips he has gone to convince foreign direct investors to come and invest in Nigeria will come to naught if there is no political and physical stability in the country. And that's what has also affected food security. So the man is doing so much, but maybe fifth columnist, maybe at some point he feels that the situation is overwhelming. He will not admit that because as a soldier, you don't celebrate failure. You have to be a man and you have to be stoically, you have to be equanimous about everything. But the bottom line is that my own take is this issue of security, whether you talk about managing IPOB in Southeast, the NSAS protests in the Southwest, the banditry in the North, the elders farmers clashes in North Central and all of that, they come as a result of global challenges, like issue of climate change. It doesn't have control over that. Mm-hmm. Issue of COVID-19. You may think it's just and Dr. Okonzo was talking about looking at the root cause. We all know the root causes. There have been so many researches about the impact of climate change on insecurity, the impact of COVID-19, the job losses that have come. The president is trying, through social investment program, trying to get people to work, talking about agric revolution, money through anchor borrowers program. But now, the bandits are not allowing the farmers to get to the farm, or they are demanding for access fee and harvest fee. That is frustrating because what you have your vision carved out, you know where you want to take the country to, but maybe the situation, the unenvisaged situation, is not helping him, and it will need more than planning. It will also need prayers. It will also need coordination. What I advise at all times, I have opportunity to speak on the issue of security, which I've also commented on in my column in The Punch, is that there is need for better coordination among the three tiers of government, because the federal government is pulling its weight, it's doing its bit, is acquiring assets. These assets are going to be deployed at community levels. So if the communities are not receptive and not supportive, the issue of whistleblower protection law, it's something that is needed like yesterday, so that even when people volunteer information to help the military, their lives are not endangered. They are protected. So it's a wide, convoluted, complex dynamics that we are dealing with. But like I said, I pray for Mr. President's success in this, because whatever he does after May 29, it will not be judged by the infrastructure. It will be about the security of the country.
On a final note, thank you so much, Jide. Kabir, give us your final take on this issue the president talked about. We have the farmer harvest clash. The season is around here. We have the issues of, the state police, and of course trying to secure some areas, and some issues relating to the security which Nigerians are expecting the government to do something differently about.
Thank you. And incidentally, Mr. President has roughly just a year and a few months to do this. So I would like to ride on the concluding remarks of Mr. Jide when he talked about coordination at the federal, state, and local government levels. Everything that the administration does, if they are not reflected at those levels, then frankly, we are not likely to see any major changes. And the amazing thing is that there are beautiful policies. As an example, there is the revised national security strategy. There is no part of the world, even in the US, if you pick that document and expose it to a country like the US, they will commend you. Amazing document, but where are we in terms of its implementation? So I'm hoping that when Mr. President said that he meets, with his security team and they spend 4 hours, part of what they will start doing is to review the level of implementation of some of these amazing policies that I've mentioned, such as the revised National Security Strategy 2019, the National Defense Policy, the Counterterrorism Strategy, NACTES 2016. Name them, they're all there. How are we faring in terms of its implementation? I can tell you, as someone who is in that space, that we can do better in terms of our implementation. Second point is the for lack of a better word, impunity within the security space. Just yesterday, the Defense Headquarters gave out some data in terms of successes that it has achieved. About 24,000 plus of members of both Jamaat al-Ahli al-Dawati wal-Jihad and the Islamic State in West Africa province that have surrendered. It has killed about 950 terrorists. Name them. Successes like that. So what kind of metrics do we have within our security space that allows monitoring and evaluation? Again, another thing that I'm hoping that during the council meetings, they are able to use metrics so that we can see in clear terms who has done well and who hasn't done well. We can sit here and discuss for the next 24 hours, but if you don't have metrics to measure performance, then it will be difficult, really, this first point I made around impunity. And then I run a consultancy, and I know, for instance, just like Mr. Femi mentioned, that in the last 2 months, there have been successes. I can tell you that if we use starting from June, the number of fatalities that we had in the country was about 1,000 plus for the month of June. But by November, we had gone down to 400. And by December, it's about 290, 93 thereabout. So clearly, there has been improvement. But unfortunately, and that worries me, that improvement is not being communicated to Nigerians. Rather, the narrative is the opposite. A lot of things have happened in the early weeks of December. A former governor in one of the Northwest states came out and said some things that were quite unpalatable. So again, metrics is very important, and tied to that metrics is the need to take action against failure, as it were, especially within the security space. So I'm hoping that these three things will be part of what would be done within the next 1 year plus, so that the security architecture is strengthened with some of these new development.
All right, sorry, Ntalive, just before you take the next excerpt, I'd just like to add, gentlemen, that the president, in responding to the issue on security, the president, of course, made reference to the number of local governments, reclaimed from the bandits in the northeast, and of course the quietness prevailing at the moment in the northwest, north central, and he asked Nigerians to judge his administration fairly based on, of course, events happening in those areas and also in the south, where we were and, where we are at the moment. I think those are some key points that we should to your friend.
Indeed, really clear. And let's now look at another aspect of the, the president's, interview with Cyril Strober on the NTA. There is no doubt that the president is a champion of, corruption, And indeed, he has been that all the while, internationally, one must say, and that is where he is coming from. And whenever he said at the beginning, around 2015, when he assumed office, that if Nigerians don't kill corruption, corruption will kill Nigeria, and has been moving consistently in that regard. In the interview, he specifically said that people must live within their means. That's a direct quote. To get more of that, let's listen to him once again so that we can now have time to look at it.
The problem of corruption is a continuous one for a developing country like Nigeria. People have to accept living within their means. As long as people try to live outside their means, so long as corruption will be with us. And the best way is firmness by departments, by ministries, and especially by states. Now look at the local governments. The local government in this country, the third tier of government, are getting less and less effective. And they are supposed to be the most effective because they deal with from the bottom upwards, especially in terms of education, healthcare, which is the basic things for the majority of Nigerians. Educating the people or the children, and the healthcare for families and so on. So Nigerians must conserve resources to effectively give education and healthcare to the needy.
I had wanted to start off with Judicial, but you please give me a break. Let me move on to let me because I've read much about that in your column. So let me move on to Benin and then hear from guest there. What's your take of the president's, statement, most especially when he said people should live within their means, and of course referring to local governments as becoming less and less effective, in which case it is where they are supposed to be more effective than we think they are at the moment?
The means test has always been a way of gauging corruption all over the world. If a person is on a salary of 100,000 naira, for instance, and his consumption is in excess of 500,000, even members of his neighborhood will ordinarily take note. But it goes beyond that. It comes to this issue of law enforcement, it comes to the issue of impunity, it comes to the issue of immunity, and so on. And for a country like ours, it is actually possible to develop a peculiar accounting or auditing system that will address us. So we don't have to keep practicing what is not working for us. We need to be very fundamental. We need to really study what makes corruption thrive. It's not just because people want to. Of course, people would like to live beyond their means if they're not disciplined. But what are the checks and the balance? If any person is caught cheating, stealing, whatever means of corruption, how speedily will it be tried and punished? So those are the issues. I think we have the architecture already. We just need to get on with them. We have institutions, ICPC, EFCC, the police force, all of them. We need to make sure they have the resources to do their work, and we need to create the atmosphere where nobody is protected. So, just like I am, a Benin man, if a Benin man is found to be corrupt, my sympathy should not go to him. My sympathy should go to the country as a whole. My sympathy should actually flow towards the common good, to say corruption is a kind of worm that is going to eat the system hollow. Therefore, whether the person is my brother or my kinsman should not matter, so long as the person is tried fairly and punished according to the laws of the land. So we need to open up our system, redesign our accounting system, our auditing system, to make sure things are more transparent and so on and so forth. I think that was going to be the way to go. You know, it is good that the president still acknowledges the problem of corruption, but we need to tackle the problem scientifically, drawing again on all our elements of national power. I really don't think we should throw up our hands in despair about it. Corruption can be tackled.
Dr. Okonzo, thank you for your response. Let's come back to the studio and throw the question at well, I'm giving you doctor now. Mr. Femi Additional. Now, one area where the public, you know, raised concern in the president's anti-corruption fight is not in loot recovery. He has, you know, he scored high, but in what is alleged to be selective profiling of, you know, oppositions. And in Mr. Stober's question about opposition, you know, politicians, you know, jumping boats to into the APC, or the politicians who are either have been accused of corruption or corrupt practices, jumping boats into the APC. What will be the fate of those kind of politicians? The president's response was, no one will go scot-free. Is that definitive? Is it the direct message coming from the president?
And I think that's the situation. You know, in our country, it is so very easy to allege. Very easy. And people turn allegations to definitive and conclusive positions. They will say, oh, he had a case, he went into APC, the case died. And I asked them, point at one person. Just one, not two, not three. Point at one person who had a case and came into APC and that case died. They can't point it out. Just like Mr. President said, no one who has a case to answer will escape. All those who had cases before they came into APC, their cases continue. Their cases continue. It's just a matter of that we expect our judiciary to be able to dispense with these things more expeditiously. But with this president, corruption is something he doesn't brook at all. In fact, the easiest way to fall out of favor with this president is for you to be tarred with the brush of corruption. And you are out. So it's what he said is just the position.
Dr. Kabir Adamu, what's your opinion?
Again, let's remember that tackling corruption is one of the pivotal issues that this administration is running on. There were three: insecurity, fighting corruption, and then diversification of the economy. So it's only fair that the president emphasized his role on anti-corruption in the interview. Now, I would like to write on everything that my co-discussants have mentioned and emphasize 2 points. One of them is the need to be more proactive than reactive. Part of the reason why, when you ask the question to Mr. Femi about the accusation that it's the opposition that are being, targeted in the anti-corruption campaign by the EFCC and to an extent the ICPC, part of the reason is because to an extent we're being reactive. I know a lot of policies have been put in place, but one area that I think we can strengthen the anti-corruption campaign is to look at the civil service in particular. What kind of measures do we put in place to prevent corruption? I learned this from the Europeans. They say trust is good, but control is better. So what kind of control measures do we put in place? When we opened the single treasury account where people are supposed to pay money into, it's an attempt. But how much of implementation of that policy are we? What stage of that are we? So again, let's be proactive as against being reactive so that we prevent the corruption in its first place. Number two, Asian countries have that. When Mr. President advised that we live within our means, as far as I know, none of the law enforcement agencies that we have, including the anti-corruption ones, can look at a property and ask who is the owner and then begin an investigation. So usually it is based on the whistleblower policy, somebody mentions it. But like I said, Asian countries have that. If you are a civil servant and your salary is, let's say, 200,000, and then you own a property that is worth billions of naira. There should be that provision within our laws that allowed the security agencies to question how you got that money. Let the onus of proof be on you, as against the current situation where the onus is on them to prove that you were wrong. Second point is the prosecutory aspect, where we are aware that there are corruption cases in the country, that some of them have lasted up to almost 20 years that are yet to be concluded. That's not acceptable. The deterrence element within our criminal justice system that should allow speedy prosecution of certain cases. So I think the judicial arm of government needs to look closely at that. How do they speed up the prosecution of certain cases that involve corruption, so that deterrence element. And the last point is our value system. Currently, and I say this with all sense of responsibility, not many people, shun or are against corruption. What people really matter is the money. How you got the money. Value system, unfortunately, has metamorphosed from, frowning at how to now accepting the fact that people have money. And I can give you instances, several examples of where people got illicit money, got rich through fraudulent means, and they're being celebrated. That's the failure of our value system. So again, beyond the law, we also need to go back to our value system. Look at the family unit, look at the religious institutions, look at our schools, and then lastly, the media. How do we, put forward and celebrate, success, hard work, all those value elements that made us what we were before. We need to revamp that so that young people coming up understand that when you try to, be successful, it's not just about being successful in the bad way. Being successful has to be in the good way.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Kabir Adamu. Lastly, on this issue of corruption, Jide Ojo, okay. The discourse is never exhaustive. So let's hear your views. Talking about most especially deterrence, impunity, speedy disposition of justice, and all this, aiming towards bringing down corruption to the barest minimum.
Nadabo, I thank you that you've read some of my opinions on this, and I will just summarize them. This administration, I laud them for anti-corruption measures. And you could see the infusion of technology in the fight against corruption, IPPIS, the BVN, the TSA, and all of that. But these are human elements, it's operated by human elements. If what we read in the papers about yesterday, EFCC came out to say it has secured 2,200 convictions in just 1 year, which is unprecedented. According to them, the last time they got close to something like that was in 2019, when they got about 1,800 convictions. So 2,200 and they lost about 34 is something worthy of celebration. But would this improve our rating on Corruption Perception Index? The answer is no. And you know why? Because while we focus more on grant corruption, we look less on retail corruption, in which many of us are involved. The artisans, the businessmen, everybody cutting corners. There was a trending video, I don't know, Claire, whether you saw it, somebody measuring grain. And he was putting some in his pocket. Yeah. And the guy that was measuring grain asked him to look at something over there, and in the course of time, it reduced the measure that he was putting in the polythene for him. So, two of a kind. Everybody is in the game. So retail corruption is very pervasive among market men and women, but we don't see it as corruption. We see those who steal billions as the corrupt people. And the definition of corruption, it goes even beyond money. So how much education are we giving? I think like NTA took up the issue of rape with Star. It's something you can also do, public education or, discuss this with retail corruption is very, very endemic. Very, very endemic.
But corruption can also be fought at different levels.
I'm sure.
At the retail level, there are those that should be fighting that corruption.
No, I'm only saying that NTA can also take it up. There are several other institutions fighting rape, but you chose to also weigh in on that. And I'm saying that, for that perception to diminish, for us to significantly improve on Corruption Perception Index, a lot needs to be done. Kabiru says something which is very instructive. The issue of value system. I've asked myself, even if it's among those who are already convicted, why do we still allow them to go with their national honors? Why can't we strip them of those honorary doctorate they got, or the chieftaincy title they got, or the national merit they get? Strip them of it so that people will know that even when you serve the term, you will still be without honor. I recall there was the former GOC in Sokoto who was General Otike, who was court-martialed and found to have been, was indicted by the court-martial, and he was demoted from Major General to Brigadier General and dismissed with ignominy. You know, so whatever honors you get, I think by the time people start stripping you of your, maybe you are a pastor in a church, they strip you of your pastoral duty. You are a chief in a community, they strip you of that. It will send a message. You are excommunicated. You are denied Holy Communion.
Basically, the naming and the shaming thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's one. Two, we also need to improve our legal regime at fighting corruption. Issue of whistleblower protection, for instance. It's been there in the National Assembly. How much? Can the president talk to the leadership of National Assembly and say, I need these 3-4 anti-corruption laws to be passed before June? It's not dictating to them. It's been there. Like the whistleblower protection law, the audit law. Did you know, Nadabo and Claire, that we are still using audit law of 1956? God. Which is pre-colonial.
Mr.
So
Jide,
we need to improve on that. Look at the Auditor General's report on the civil service. 4.9 trillion not evidenced in the no receipt and all of that. And they just send it to the Public Accounts Committee of the National Assembly, and that's where it lies.
Let's hear the perspective of Dr. Okonzua. Dr. Okonzua, I'm wondering if Mr. President's response to that question resonates with you, or if you feel there would have been other things, or the other things that his administration could have done to give the fight against anti-corruption more or greater credibility.
The president seems to be wary of his military past. He wants to be a Democrat and he wants to align. Otherwise, I think even the judiciary should have been involved in it, special courts and so on and so forth. If corruption is deemed a national problem or a national emergency, then maybe extraordinary measures without prejudice to the rule of law ought to be installed all the while. Of course, TSA, BVN, all those things are there. Other forms of technology. A while ago, I talked about even overhauling our accounting, our auditing system. And being who we are in Nigeria, there must be an accounting or auditing system that will fit us, that will make us really, really transparent in whatever we are doing. And of course, we also have to say this too. Corruption has a lot of causes. We also need to study them, all these causes, because desperation can bring about corruption and so on. People can also have genuine needs. They can have a gap between their income, not in terms of luxury now, real need, between their income and what they actually need for survival. So in terms of retail corruption and all that, some of those things can be explained on that basis. But all the same, we need to create a culture where corruption is forbidden. In fact, a foreign writer, John Campbell, we may not terribly like him in Nigeria, has made comments on this, that in Nigeria, apart from the nature of our politics, corruption has become a culture that victimizes people, and people are in turn victimized. So we need to address the issue of corruption head on. Special courts, special auditing system, accounting system, deployment of technology, whatever will work, so long as nobody is victimized, so long as people are giving fair trial when they are accused and so on. And of course, we handle corruption cases with dispatch. I think the solution will be in the doing. We need to be committed to it and advance all the measures.
So much, Dr. Okonzua. I think we should be done now with the corruption issue. Let's look at another aspect. One sore point, or so in quotes at least, of the budget or the Appropriation Act 2022 is you know, the president's reservations about certain aspects, which didn't really stop him from at least signing it on the 31st day of December. That's to maintain the, you know, budget cycle of January to December, and that was a good thing. But he spoke further on this. Let's take a listen.
Mr. President, let's come to the 2022 budget, which you have signed into law. The figure that was returned to you by the National Assembly was higher than what you proposed. First part of my question is, it's seen as if this is going to cause some disagreement between the executive and the National Assembly, the legislature, for having increased what you sent to them.
Well, luckily for us, when you say us, I say this government, we have, our party has a majority in both houses, both Senate and House of Representatives. I think it's understandable that committee leaders, at least, they insist that their constituency must see them to be effective by taking a project to them at whoever's expense. But we looked at the thing globally. Nigerian project, for example, we are trying to get the infrastructure, the roads, the rail, power. Now, if we move a lot of resources towards, it will be certainly at the expense of some maybe village road or something, where people will go to the marketplace and so on. But what bothers them is their own immediate request, not at the national level. So it is the government's problem to try and strike a balance between its infrastructural priorities and some constituencies.
All right, that was an excerpt of President Muhammadu Buhari's response to question on the budget and, of course, the parts or the role played by the legislators. When we come back from this short break, we'll take the views of our guests right here in the studio and from our Bini Network Center.
The Nigerian aviation sector is rapidly growing with the construction of new international airport terminals in several regions of the country. The new Murtala Mohammed International Airport has an estimated passenger increase of 30 million annually and 15 million for Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja. Malam Aminu Kano International Airport is also expected to open new frontiers for the region with more travel capacity for the annual Hajj, while the new Akanu Ibiam International Airport, Enugu, avails more business opportunities connecting the industrial cities in the region to the world. These new terminals beat world-class standards with enabling infrastructure that aid air travel, tourism, and the eventual growth of the country's GDP.
Open up commerce and, of course, link us to international societies.
People from international community will come here to do business, and then that will bring in more revenue to the state.
Now, distances can be seamlessly covered as Nigeria keeps raising its bar to suit global infrastructure standards.
The NOA, for example, has succeeded a great deal in sensitization during the pandemic, and we have found the community mobilization officers most effective in the sensitization and in the advocacy campaigns, creating awareness on the coronavirus pandemic. We have done this through the production of jingles, which were very widely distributed in different languages, in English, in Hausa, in Yoruba, in Igbo, in Tiv, in Igala, in Kanuri, in Fulfulde, in Ijo, in Isoko, in Bini, in talk of any other language you can think of. We had translated sensitization messages.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Hey, Femi Martins, just look at this. African Cup of Nations starts on the 9th of January 2022 on NTA, powered by Afrosport. For sponsorship and advertisements, contact us on 090-9890-6913 or 090-3513-2838.
The Council of Our Fathers.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
Oh, well, gentlemen, welcome back. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. And of course, we're just looking at issues in the president's interview with Cyril Stoba yesterday on the NTA. We just had an excerpt on the budget, his views on the budget, and then what really he meant by saying that government will strike a balance between critical constituency projects, rather critical infrastructure projects, and then constituency projects, talking about some insertions that were made into the budget before he signed it and said democracy, or rather the signing and the budget itself, is a work in progress. Where do I start from? Jide, can you give us briefly your assessment?
I mean, Mr. President just played smart like he did on Petroleum Industry Act in signing the budget, and that's diplomacy. Because if it were to be in previous administration, he will have thrown it back at them, and maybe by June, we will not have 2022 budget. But he tried to, salvage the situation. He didn't want to rock the boat. We have returned to January to December financial year. So the best thing is, let me sign and express my concern formally to the National Assembly. I hope the National Assembly will reciprocate the President's kind gesture by signing. And so when they resume, one of the top priorities they will deal with is the amendment that the President said he will be seeking. Because it doesn't make any sense to have an unimplementable budget. I mean, we all know that there is revenue shortfall. The Minister of Finance said the revenue projection for 2022 is about 10 trillion. And we have a budget of 17 trillion. So where will you get the balance of 7 trillion? And we are the one complaining that the president is borrowing too much. I think Shenwa Kimbaloye asked that question about the snowballing borrowing, which some of us have expressed concern, and which people are even cynically saying they hope the Chinese doesn't come and take over our national asset at some point in future. So the National Assembly should have worked.
The Minister of Finance has also said that we are on a reasonable threshold.
Yes, compared to our
GDP.
No, I'm not dwelling on the borrowing. Okay. I'm only saying that given the fact that we are running a deficit budget, like Professor Isesage said, the National Assembly can tinker with the budget, but not to insert, as they have done, 6,000 plus projects that were not designed, that were not, all the conceptualization and all of that. So you are just throwing them in because you are seeking re-election. You want to pacify and say, as some senators will say, I attracted 20 billion naira worth of projects into my senatorial districts and all of that. That's grandstanding. Because now we are just replicating and wasting resources. Many of these projects, if they are not completed before the exit of this administration, might not be taken over by the incoming administration, which then means we are still wasting very little meager resources that we are complaining is not enough. So I think the president needs to invite the leadership of National Assembly and let them see reason, and they should strike a win-win balance to ensure that we salvage the 2022 budget and make it implementable.
Okay, Dr. Kabiru Adamu, how would you describe the president's response to Cyril Stoba's question and the action with regards to the budget, assenting to the budget?
Thank you, Claire. Just like Jide mentioned, I think the president showed the magnanimity, leadership, and diplomacy. He has identified the challenge, and unfortunately, this is a challenge that has been long running. The issue of budget padding, which I know the legislature doesn't want to hear, but that is what it is. It's been long running. For me, let's be proactive. Two options, just like Jide said, meeting with the leadership of the National Assembly and come to a compromise agreement that going forward, this is where we stand. And as an option, the legislature plays that oversight function. So I'm hoping that it is during that stage, with its interaction with the MDAs, that it can identify projects so that during the budget development formulation stage, the fact that they've already identified it during the year, that will be inserted in the budget. But when you now wait until the budget is submitted and then you add, and that issue has been controversial, it doesn't speak well. So a meeting to reach a compromise would be one solution. The other one, which I know is out there, is that the judiciary, especially the Supreme Court, should come in and decide for us what is the true position of the Constitution on that issue, so that going forward, we stop having this embarrassment, as it were.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Kabir Adamu. Dr. Okunzua, let's hear your views about this. What would you say, really, about the President's body language when he was speaking yesterday in response to this very issue raised by Cyrus Toba, vis-a-vis, you know, the leadership of the National Assembly's response to questions from reporters on that day, the Appropriation Act was signed. The leadership was in a way trying to say or justify their own position, while the president is saying, at least, you're trying to strike a balance between critical and constituency projects.
The president hit the bullseye himself by talking about balance. And I couldn't disagree more with our compatriots, Jide and Kabiru, on this matter. We can't speak disparagingly about National Assembly when they are exercising a function ascribed to them by the Constitution. It is the National Assembly that approves the budget. So the president couldn't have flung the document back at them. So I believe our National Assembly, as the very cornerstone of our democracy, should begin to assert itself. Well, because the APC controls the presidency and National Assembly, I ordinarily expect you have some kind of backdoor mechanisms for harmonizing some of these areas that can throw up discrepancies. But beyond that, the issue of budget padding and so on is misnomer. It's National Assembly that approves the budget in a democracy, especially the stipulation of our own constituency, of our own constitution. So let's not go there at all. The president has done the right thing by acting as a statesman, but I want to remove the word magnanimity. He was not doing the National Assembly a favor. I expect the senator representing Edo Senatorial District, for instance, to bring home the bacon. I want to see what he's doing, apart from making laws for the general well-being of the country. He has to address the peculiarities of Edo South, for instance, and all other citizens who have senators representing them will expect the same. So as our culture evolves, the president has made a major investment in that by not stimulating a controversy out of this. Discussion should keep going on and on, but that doesn't mean the National Assembly should be lampooned, because they are doing their work. They want to represent their constituencies. It is they who actually know what their peculiarities are. As I said before, the senator representing Edo South Senatorial District, for instance, will know more about Benin City than the president or any person in Aso Rock. So let there be a mechanism for harmonizing all these things. But it is the function of National Assembly to approve the national budget proposed by the presidency, and we cannot detract from that.
Okunzua, now the final response on this matter before we move on to the next excerpt. Mr. Additional, I'm going to ask you on the message, your deductions from the president's reaction to that, what the cuts and the addition, the subtraction and addition from the Senate to the public. From his response to the interview, the body language we read is that, yes, there probably is no love lost between the executive and the judiciary. And the executive. But the feeling we see is much more deeper than being unhappy.
No, I'll say that between the executive and the legislature in this season, there is a lot of collaboration. Collaboration does not translate to being rubber stamp. It does not translate to one controlling the other. No. The legislature we have is still independent, but it collaborates with the executive for the sake of the country and for the sake of our democracy. We saw the last National Assembly in which the legislature was like an opposition to the executive, and they were both of the same party. That was anarchy at the best. But it's not happening now. You have collaboration between the executive and the judicial and the legislature, and while the liberty and the freedom of one is not compromised for the other. That was what the president displayed when, despite his reservations about certain inclusions in the budget, he signed. And he said, I'm going to ask for virement. He particularly said there were insertions of about 6,000 projects and key projects that should be finished and commissioned this year.
My point is that from his response, he was more than, in fact, he was infuriated by their actions.
Infuriated would not be my choice of word. He had his reservation. He had his reservation. He had his reservation. And you know that the president, he does not hold back his words. When he needs to speak, he speaks.
Can we take the next excerpt?
Okay, our next excerpt is on the Electoral Amendment Bill. Let's just take a listen.
At the time the National Assembly passed it, the provisions particularly dealing with direct primaries for the political parties, many people said the Buhari we know will sign immediately because he sides with the people who should participate fully in electing their party leaders. But you withheld assent. Can you explain further why you took that decision?
I think there are three ways: direct, indirect, and consensus. So people should be given the option. If they wanted to go direct, let them go direct. If they want consensus, let's have them consensus. The important thing is to show Nigerians, wherever they are, that we respect them, that they are the ones that decide what to do, who to vote, under which party, that we do not allow anybody to raise an army of thugs and intimidate people and make them vote the way he wanted. That's our objective, and we hope Nigerians will appreciate it, that we respect them. We don't allow anybody, no matter how resourceful or influential the person is, in whichever party, to raise an army of thugs and force his candidate on the constituencies.
Jide Ojo, the key point here, the main takeaway here is Nigerians have the right to choose their leaders the way they want to. That is what he really said. What I say?
That's very right, very, very on point. At first, if I wrote a piece in my column on the motive behind the amendment of Section 87 of the Electoral Act. The British will tell you, if nothing is broken, you don't fix it. The Section 87 already gave leeway to political parties, direct or indirect. And we've been using that for over 10 years now. The last Electoral is Electoral 2010 as amended. So why did that amendment come? Was it deliberate? Was it done out of mischief? The bottom line is that I now have a greater concern about this Electoral Act with what the civil society organization now discovered to be cross-referencing gap and clerical errors. and they spotted about 10 of it. So if the president has signed, there will have been a lot of litigations. And that's why I became a later day convert that, okay, the president did well by not signing. Because, we should get to a point in our national life that National Assembly should be doing a more thorough work. Cross-referencing error and drafting errors and cross-referencing gap were part of the reason the president withheld assent in 2018.
Okay, Mr. Ojo, thank you. I want us to quickly, conclude this segment so that we take the others. Dr. Kabiru Adamu, are you also a latter-day convert? I've not been following your stream.
No, I've always been supportive of the amendment of the Electoral Act. But just like Jide mentioned, there were definitely errors, administrative errors within the act that was presented to Mr. President. So beyond that, the point made by Mr. President that democracy should also be exercised even at the party level, where he made the point that the party should be allowed to choose. I think that that's absolutely important. Ownership of the process by Nigerians, I think for me, is what is more important, and that is the point that Mr. President mentioned. Time will not allow me to go into what I...
Please, thank you. Thank you for obliging. Let's get to Benin and also get...
Dr. Okozua, let's hear your take on this very aspect of, the president's interview, talking about the Electoral Amendment Bill, which he insisted in that interview as an answer that Nigerians, have the right to choose their own leaders the way they want to, direct, indirect, or the consensus, either ways.
Well, the president was very authoritative, and the reason he disclosed is also very cogent. If you're talking about democracy, you're talking about options, really. If you don't have alternatives, what do you actually choose? So he's correct in that. But the very motive of National Assembly, too, should not be second-guessed. They were actually acting on our experiences since 1999 about party structure, party control, and so on, and all the issues that make democracy work or not to work. So the National Assembly, I believe, also had good intentions, but the president has reasoned that you cannot foreclose options if you are a democracy. So dialogue goes on. Let the National Assembly and the presidency rub minds on the issue and tell us how to proceed. Because the very purpose of that restriction to direct primaries was actually to promote adult universal suffrage, both within the party and at general elections. But since political parties are separate entities unto themselves, they are also free to use their modalities. So both ways, the president has said, established his own point, National Assembly has its own point. Further room for harmonization.
Response, and we expect it will continue with the rest of the excerpt. Let's quickly take excerpt on APC and party politics.
All constituencies are supposed to produce their leadership in our party. What other parties do is their own business. But we want to make sure that our party members understand that they are respected, no matter from polling unit, from ward to polling unit, or polling unit to ward, to local government, to state, and up to Abuja. So those who want to be elected at any level, let them work for it. Nobody is going to appoint anybody. The 4-year cycle is constitutional. It cannot be interfered by anybody. So if the party couldn't agree, then the opposition can take over. What did the PDP do? They thought that the opposition cannot come together, but when ACN, ANPP, CPC, Abuja came together, before PDP realized that they were off, they are still off. So they can see it.
Gentlemen, I expect a 30 seconds response. Is it a case of to be forewarned is to be forearmed? Jide Ojo?
Exactly. I think that's what the president is the message the president is trying to pass across. What's worth doing at all is worth doing well. And I think I'm with him on that.
Dr. Kabir, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Zamfara is an example. Rivers State is an example for the ruling party. So yes, to be forward is to be fought. In fact, that's where we are.
Oh, that's great. Before we come down to Femi Additional, let's hear from Okunzo.
Well, yes, the president was talking to his party and his party men, and maybe telling Nigerians that whatever dysfunction you might perceive in the APC is not morally in support of it. And talking globally about democracy, our political parties, whether the opposition or the party in government, they have to be well run, they have to be well organized. Otherwise, we will not have alternatives to choose from. That would detract from the quality of our democracy.
All right, Dr. Kunzwa, thank you. And we will quickly, I don't know, get the opinion of Femi. Do you have any on this?
Yes, I'll just say the president is a straight talker.
Okay,
even when it involves him, involves his party, involves, like, it's a straight talker.
Okay, the president also said something about infrastructure and COVID-19. If we can have that, and then that will be all that's all that we can take. Okay, I'm told we do not have much time for that. So, Nadabo, I think it's time we appreciate our guest.
Yeah. Femi Additional, it's our pleasure. Thank you so very much. We earlier learned you really want to leave much earlier, but for the conversation, at least you've stayed back. Thank you so much. It's our pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jide Ojo, it's our pleasure. We've been part of this all this while, at least all through, and then we are going to be part of that. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thanks
Dr.
for having
Kabir
me.
Adamu, thank you so much for being part of Good Morning Nigeria today.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Okunzwa, we cannot thank you much more, but really, you've been part of this, and we thank you so much, brother. Up next on Good Morning Nigeria is Foreign Tidbits.
Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said his country needed to reconcile weeks after defeating a rebel attempt on Addis Ababa. In his Christmas message, Abiy said reconciliation was necessary to defeat what he called Ethiopia's historical enemies. Ethiopians will mark Christmas, locally known as Ghana, on Saturday, 7th January. In November, federal forces and their allies beat back Tigray People's Liberation Front rebels from cities in Afar and Amara regions. Abiy himself spent days on the front line commanding operations against the rebels. Meanwhile, South Africans will no longer be barred from entering France. The French government published a decree on Thursday that removed South Africa from the list of places subject to highly restricted travel rules. Travelers who have received the jab will be able to enter the French territory without having to complete a self-isolation period. Those who are unvaccinated must, on the contrary, quarantine in France for 10 days under supervision from local authorities. France almost completely banned travel to and from South Africa after the first COVID-19 cases involving the Omicron variant were detected in November. The highly contagious variant has since spread around the world, causing record daily cases in the United States and parts of Europe.
Right, next is sports from our sports desk.
Nigeria Super Eagles held their first training session in Garoua on Thursday ahead of their opening game against Egypt at the 2021 Africa Cup of Nations. The training held at the VSTS Ernest of Roundé at Jos Stadium, Garoua, Cameroon. Coach Austin Eguafon is expressing satisfaction with the level of preparations and revealed that striker Odion Ighalo is eager to feature at this year's AFCON despite his club Al-Shabaab refusing to release him for the tournament. Aside Ighalo, the duo of Jamilu Collins and Tronin Ebuyi are the other players yet to join their Eagles teammates.
First training, about an hour, 15 minutes. Couldn't do everything that we wanted to because of time factor. But however, I think we're very impressed. You know, the field also, it's very good. Environment is good. Weather is good. And the boys responded very well. And we're happy. Then we take it game after game. I mean, it's not going to be easy because every team that have come here have come to prove a point. You know, and the first game, it's very crucial to any team. That will give you a lot of encouragement, you know, going to the tournament proper. So I would say a little bit of pressure, but I think I'm more relaxed now than about 2 weeks or a week ago.
The Super Eagles of Nigeria will take on 7-time AFCON champions, the Pharaohs of Egypt, in their opening game next week, Tuesday.
And that sports desk. And just before we bid you our goodbyes, there'll be a repeat broadcast of the special interview with President Muhammadu Buhari at 9 o'clock this morning, shortly after Good Morning Nigeria. All NTA stations are directed to hook up to the network service for the program.
And that's also to further buttress the point that if you didn't watch it yesterday, you were not part of this discussion this morning, you still have an opportunity to do that. And that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Join us next week, Monday, for another edition. I am Yusuf Nadabo Usman. Have a great day.
I am Claire Delabo Abdul Razak. We, of course, always enjoy you to join us in our fight against rape and rapists. And from all the production crew, we thank you and have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
NTA, you can't beat the reach.
Welcome to the world's first football scouting reality show, Football Dreams. We kicked off an extensive scouting selection for football talents in 2019, and together with our African Football Network, we've evaluated over 3,000 players from 13 countries. They all share the same dream, that one day they will become a professional football player. Only 28 players made it to fight for a contract with a professional European team in the grand finale of Football Dreams 2021 in Benin. Our main host and former professional footballer, England national player, and FA Cup winner John Fashanu will guide us through the show and push the players through extremely hard and challenging tests. Halfway to the final, 14 of the 28 players will be eliminated, but only one player will win the professional contract.
This is the network service of the NTA.
Hello and welcome. I am Cyril Stober, and I welcome you to this special interview with the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR. Mr. President, thank you for speaking to the NTA.
Thank you.
Well, I'm just thinking to start off, Excellency, you just clocked 79. How does it feel, especially bearing in mind that you have enormous responsibilities on your shoulders as President of Nigeria, a rather complex country?
Yes, I think COVID-19 has come to our rescue in the sense that the amount of people that need to see you can't see you, so that really gives you more time. And about my age, Yes, I see my colleagues. They are now resting, and I assure you that I'm looking forward to the next 17 months when I too will have to be less busy. The age is telling on me. Working now for 6, 7, 8 hours a day, flat in the office, is no joke. The questions of executive council, memos from as many states as possible to be considered virtually every week. So really it's a lot of hard work. But as I said, I ask for it and I cannot complain.
So, Mr. President, would that be the reason why, as you marked your 79th birthday, you said you were looking forward, or you can't wait to hand over in 2023 and retire to your farm? Why is that?
Yes, because, look, as you know, I have been a governor. I have been a minister. And I'm in my second term as president. So I have gone through all the system. And really, what else can I do for this country? I have given my best, and I hope after I leave, Nigerians will reflect and at least not show appreciation. I'm not expecting any appreciation, but what I'm expecting is for Nigerians to say, yes, this man has done his best. This is the most I'm expecting from Nigerians. But it's no joke, I'm telling you. Look at what the problem we are having in the southeast now. How many police stations were taken over, weapons missing? We closed the border with Benin, we closed the border with Niger, but we have to accept the reality that the weapons are coming from our own armories. Police stations are being attacked and so on. So our main problem is, I hope I will leave a more secure Nigeria than what it is now.
All right, so Mr. President, that easily is one of the biggest challenges in Nigeria today, the threat to security. And it would seem that the more that is put in, the more complex the situation gets. And Nigerians ask, is the government capable of solving this problem before handing over in 2023?
Yes, the government is capable and is going to do it because members of the security, the armed forces and other law enforcement agents, their own security depends on one Nigeria. So no matter when people are selfish, it's their self first. So even for their own selves, they better stabilize Nigeria, and I believe they will do it. I know we are short of resources. For example, dealing with the militants, if people bother to reflect on how we found the northeast and south, and how much progress we have made, and acquiring helicopters, aircraft, their maintenance, their ammunition, armored cars, to counter effectively the bandits. They cost money and they cost time for training and adaptation.
Let's look at another part of your government's program. Security is just one aspect. The fight against corruption, you spoke a lot about that when you were coming into office. Now, it would seem that with the coming on board of new headship of the EFCC, the fight against corruption has been revamped. How would you rate it for now?
Well, problem of corruption is is a continuous one for a developing country like Nigeria. People have to accept living within their means. As long as people try to live outside their means, so long as corruption will be with us. And the best way is firmness by departments, by ministries, and especially by states. Now look at the local governments. The local government in this country, the third tier of government, are getting less and less effective. And they are supposed to be the most effective because they deal with from the bottom upwards, especially in terms of education, healthcare, which is the basic things for the majority of Nigerians. Educating the people or the children, and the healthcare for families and so on. So Nigerians must conserve resources to effectively give education and healthcare to the needy.
It is assumed in certain quarters that many high-profile politicians who are either been investigated or who have been prosecuted for corrupt practices defect to the governing APC with the hope that it might provide them a soft landing. What do you say about that?
No, I don't like to accept that joining our party will check our insistence on accountability. We are very serious that people will aspire to lead at whatever level by their performance, by their integrity, both professional and personal. And but the problem is that we have to work within the system. Even if you suspect individuals, unless there is evidence, there isn't much you can do. So really, it's the system that makes it possible for some people really to even be corrupt.
So you'd say to them that even if they join your party, it does not mean that they will go scot-free if they are found wanting.
They can't. Nobody can go scot-free as far as I'm concerned. As far as I'm concerned. Imagine what the opposition could do to me if there is something along my record. A lot of confusion could have been caused. But luckily, I think we try to occupy offices with integrity. And that is the best thing for Nigerian leadership at all levels. Behave with integrity. If that is done, we will achieve better results. If that is not done, a lot of time will be wasted in talking and quarreling and a lot of noise.
Mr. President, let's come to the 2022 budget, which you have signed into law. The figure that was returned to you by the National Assembly was higher than what you proposed. First part of my question is, it's seen as if this is going to cause some disagreement between the executive and the National Assembly, the legislature, for having increased what you sent to them. Can you tell us about that? That is this causing a quarrel between the executive and the legislature?
Well, luckily for us, when I say us, I say this government, we have, our party has a majority in both houses, both Senate and House of Representatives. I think it's understandable that committee leaders, at least, they insist that their constituency must see them to be effective by taking a project to them at whoever's expense. But we looked at the thing globally, Nigerian project. For example, we are trying to get the infrastructure, the roads, the rail, power. Now, if we move a lot of resources towards, it will be certainly at the expense of some maybe village road or something, where people will go to the marketplace and so on. But what bothers them is their own immediate request, not at the national level. So it is the government's problem to try and strike a balance between its infrastructural priorities and some constituencies. Some constituencies, especially those constituencies that really elected members of the government. But those who don't elect us, let them live with their own problem. But they will not be denied. They will not be denied what government ought to do to them, especially in terms of education, health, and some infrastructure. For example, we can't say roads cannot go through a certain town because the town did not vote for us. We can't do it.
Okay, so in this case, it's not just a quarrel. There's no fight over you've increased the budget, and there's no such fight, really.
Well, all I did is I feel to them that there will be less constituency conscious. Let them be more national in their perspective, in their idea of the country.
If I might just take it a little bit further, how do you respond to the feeling that the current National Assembly is perhaps completely under the influence of the executive?
No, I don't think so. As I said, we consider ourselves lucky. Our party has a majority in both Senate and the House. So it's natural, I think, for the committee members to be members of our party. And is the members of the committee and the leaders would not like to be seen to be anti-leadership of the party in terms of the Senate President, the leader of the House, the Vice President, and the President. They wouldn't like to do that. So it is, I think the opposition has a problem because the majority of the members will have to support the leadership, of the country because they are from the same party.
Well, Mr. President, there are still areas of, I wouldn't call it dissent, I'd say maybe disagreements. And one clear case is the Electoral Amendment Bill, which you withheld assent. At the time the National Assembly passed it, the provisions particularly dealing with direct primaries for the political parties, many people said the Buhari we know will sign immediately because he sides with the people who should participate fully in electing their party leaders. But you withheld assent. Can you explain further why you took that decision?
Yeah, well, my explanation is that people should be given a choice that is direct, and then when they come together, without necessarily going to the polls and so on. And I think there are three ways: direct, indirect, and consensus. So people should be given the option. If they wanted to go direct, let them go direct. If they want consensus, let's have them consensus. The important thing is to show Nigerians, wherever they are, that we respect them, that they are the ones that decide what to do, who to vote, under which party, that we do not allow anybody to raise an army of thugs and intimidate people and make them vote the way he wanted. That's our objective. And we hope Nigerians will appreciate it, that we respect them. We don't allow anybody, no matter how resourceful or influential the person is, in whichever party, to raise an army of thugs and force his candidate on the constituencies.
Well, but some think that with direct primaries not being held, then maybe some big politicians, particularly governors of states, will hijack the process and determine who goes. Perhaps that was the consideration.
The governors were like me, we are all going, except for a few. But if they want to be kingmakers, that's where they will have a lot of problem. If they want to institute somebody must inherit them from their party or from elsewhere, then that's where they will have a lot of problem. But if they have free mind, just to make sure the system works, I think it will be cost effective. This is what I believe, and that's why people are trying to ask me, who do you want to succeed you? I say, no, I'm not a kingmaker. I tried 3 times, and the first time I said, God did, and God came.
Well, speaking of this, Mr. President, you say you're not a kingmaker, but in your party, the governing APC, you're considered as the leader of the party. So the question here is the APC is going through tough times with regard to a convention that will elect its officials. And within the party, there's so much disagreement. Some people have even threatened that they would make sure it doesn't hold. What is your position on this?
My position is simple. I think I succeeded in trying to get my position understood, in the sense that I said we start from bottom upwards, from polling unit to ward, to local government, to state, and then to Abuja. So that the party, because I'm concerned about my party, the party in all constituencies, they will know that and their position coming up. And therefore, when they come to Abuja, they are likely to work together. There is no saying that there is no kingmaker from Abuja, take this. No constituency is being dictated upon. All constituencies are supposed to produce their leadership in our party. What other parties do is their own business. But we want to make sure that our party members understand that they are respected, no matter from polling unit, from ward to polling unit, or polling unit to ward, to local government, to state, and after Abuja. So those who want to be elected at any level, let them work for it. Nobody is going to appoint anybody.
You see the current issues will be resolved and the convention will still go ahead?
Well, time, we have time frame. We have to work because the 4-year cycle is constitutional. It cannot be interfered by anybody. So if the party couldn't agree, then the opposition can take over. What did the PDP do? They thought that the opposition cannot come together, but when ACN, ANPP, CPC, ABGA came together, before PDP realized that they were off, they are still off. So they can see it.
All right, Mr. President, let's come back to the government. Your government has invested massively in infrastructure development, and some of these projects have already been delivered. How did you manage to do this in spite of the lean resources and COVID-19, which nobody expected?
I think I realize and I'm convinced that You cannot have a sustained development without infrastructure. Unless we have got the roads, the rail, and power, we'll be wasting our time. But when you get the roads, when the roads are quite good, people from the rural areas can move to the towns and go back, bring their food items or whatever, or come and buy and sell and so on. When you get the infrastructure, when you get the infrastructure right, the rail, then there will be less heavy trucks on the roads, and the roads will last longer, and you need less for their maintenance. When you have power, people will not be buying generators, so people will switch on. All we have to make sure that there is power available, and we improve security, and people will mind their own businesses. But when you don't have the infrastructure, when the roads are not good, when there is no rail, when there is no power, I am afraid you are pushing people too far.
Speaking of power, Mr. President, quite recently you appointed a new minister. Is that a sign that you were not pleased with the development of the power sector? I mean, electricity generation and distribution are still very problematic now.
Yes, well, I just have to try another member of cabinet that I thought really will understand being an engineer and appreciate our problem of power. Power is absolutely necessary to Nigeria. We are even thinking of Mambila and so on. The Ministry of Water Resources is doing his best, repairing the dams, trying to bring out the power part of them to be operational and so on. There's a lot of infrastructure that need to be rehabilitated so that we can make power available. When we make power available, then there will be less demand of petroleum products. There will be less problem for generators, which means there will be less need for foreign exchange to be importing machinery and so on. The linkages between having power and not having it are very clear for those who look at the national economy.
With respect to power generation, many Nigerians would like you to give them their word and that the power situation will improve.
Well, we have to try and see how can we do it. And luckily, technology is maybe coming to our rescue in terms of using solar. You see, conventional power, the lines, they are so costly and easily sabotaged. Remember, a number of lines are sabotaged in the northeast by Boko Haram and so on. But when it is, when we are using panels, solar panels, you can't cover the sun. So technology is coming to our rescue. I think we have a program of investment and improvement on power generation, distribution throughout the country. And we know Nigerians, when you provide that, I think a lot of them will look after themselves.
Let's go back to the global pandemic which has hit the world. COVID-19, it continues to ravage the world, and now we have the variant Omicron. What is your government doing to develop the capacity within this country to be able to have local solutions to these challenges, like developing or producing vaccines, so we don't depend on the world, people who donate, and sometimes they donate vaccines which are close to expiry?
They are working very hard, working with the Ministry of Health to develop vaccine, as we mentioned. We are working very hard to, but we shouldn't make any noise about it until we succeed. This is the important thing. But we are doing something about it. But COVID-19 has no respect, I think, for power or technology. Otherwise, they wouldn't start with America and China. Who are we at the bottom of the ladder? It's a very mysterious development, and Nigeria is not doing badly. Under the secretary to the government, they are doing very well. They are all over the place, you know, and encouraging people to take the inoculation and so on.
Well, Mr. President, we must thank you for speaking to us at this point, and I'd just like to take the opportunity to say Happy New Year to you.
Same to you. Thank you very much.
Let's live together. Let's stop fighting each other. Let us live as one. It doesn't matter where you come from, your tribe or religion, man, woman or child. It doesn't matter who you are. Put Nigeria first. No matter where you come from, no matter your religion, we are one. Let's live together.
How can we develop when we're always in crisis? Families have become refugees in their country. No matter our differences, show some understanding.
No matter where you come from, no matter your religion, we are one. Let's live together.
And designed by the Almighty.
Someone who is a Christian is someone who lives a life of Jesus Christ. And the life of Jesus Christ is a life of sacrifice.
Yes.
NTA, you can't beat the rich.
This is the network service of the NTA.
African literature is important to us Africans so we can hear the voices of the people of Africa and not just read in a second-hand voice about the continent and its people. What do Africans think want, feel, and believe? How do they worship and raise their children? What do they value and cherish from their ancient culture? This is African Literature on the NTA, the largest television network in Africa. I am Nina Basi. Stay with us. This edition will take a look at the need for literary works to be made available to the readers.
With liberation and increased literacy since most African nations gained their independence in the 1950s and 1960s, African literature has grown dramatically in quantity and in recognition, with numerous African works appearing in Western academic curricula and on best of list compiled since the end of the 20th century. African writers in this period wrote both in Western languages and in traditional African languages. There has been a lot of literary productions in Africa since the beginning of the current decade, even though readers do not always follow in large numbers. One can also notice the appearance of certain writings that break with the academic style. In addition, the shortage of literary critics can be explored on the continent. Literary events seem to be very fashionable, including literary awards, some of which can be distinguished by their original concepts. The increasing use of the internet has changed how readers of African literature assess content. This has led to the rise of digital reading and publishing platforms. In general, the writer's audience has an important role to play in the shaping of his art. In fact, the existence of a work of art is fundamentally linked with the audience who is to enjoy, criticize, or hate it. And this point has not been ignored by any of the modern writers, including the most liberal-minded amongst them. Although the decision to become a writer is the prerogative of an individual, the fact that it takes a subject matter from a society to which his message is addressed shows that he cannot entirely liberate himself from the society's dictates. The revelation of the truth of a writer's real moral work is assessed by the society. The happenings resulting in part from the audience reception of the work is undoubtedly the writer's goal.
Until the lions have their own historians, the history of the hunt will always glorify the hunter.
The African Writers Series, launched in 1962, enabled the dissemination of African literature worldwide and contributed to the creation of a critical sensitivity among readers and critics alike to its distinct qualities and values. What is more, Henneman educational books made it possible for African authors writing in Arabic and French to be part of a larger literary phenomenon. Gabriel Okara, Wole Soyinka, Dennis Brutus, Ama Ata Ado, Alex Laguma, and John Pepe Clark, for instance, owed their first publications and early recognition to Black authors. Some Africans and expatriates set up the Mbari Club to give young artists the opportunity with its own publishing house, which encouraged and published young African writers and made their works available to the audience in and beyond Africa. How was Sidi Aliyu, driven by passion for reading books and making it available to the public, established a bookstore which houses African literary works and a conducive atmosphere for children to read and a space for literary authors to host most of their literary discourse in Abuja.
My passion for books. I've always loved reading books. Since I was a little child, I've always had that passion to read. I can remember growing up, I always imagined myself locked up in a bookstore, stay there the whole day and have all the books to read. Because then when you go out shopping for books with your parents, you're only allowed to take like 2 or 3 copies of books when you have your eyes on 100 of others. So it's always been that passion to run a bookstore, to have a place, that happy place where people also who have the passion for reading will come and find the kind of books they like to read. So more like, I'll call it a dream come true. We're not just a bookstore, we also have like a reading room and a space where we host literary events, book clubs and all that.
She receives patronage from students, young, old, middle-aged, working class and Nigerians in the diaspora.
We have the young, we have the old. For the young ones, like students, they love read. Those that love reading, they come in here, but they are always constrained with affordability and all that, so they don't pick as much as they want to. But lots of interest from the younger ones and parents who all want to build the reading culture for their children. Tend to buy lots of books for their kids. And then we have the middle-aged people, working class people. Like I said, those that want to, or I've always said it, those that want to read will always find you and come and buy books. So the middle class, we've got quite a number of people that come in here to buy.
Her supplies comes from indigenous and foreign publishers and independent authors as well.
The Nigerian books, we've got quite a number of publishers here in Nigeria, Printing Press and all that. So the publishers, sometimes we reach out to them, when we get requests from customers, we reach out to them and other books. Other times they reach out to us, especially when they are publishing new books, and they send in their books. For the foreign books, we also reach out to publishers abroad, other books, and have it sent to us. And then authors too, independent publishers and all that, authors tend to visit and bring in their books.
What does her 3 years in the business look like?
Yeah, we're running to that third year. How lucrative is the business? When I started this business, actually, it was more, like I said, out of passion and hobby, to have that place. I didn't look at the business angle at the beginning. But of course, when you go into this buying and selling, looking for capital and all that, you start looking at that business angle. When you look at the times we're in now, we are trying to keep our head above water, right? It's not as if it's not some money spinning machine and all that, but I think the satisfaction is having those that love reading reaching out to you and getting the right books, But when it's lucrative, well, we're hoping it will get lucrative in the future.
She also thinks differently about Africa's reading culture.
Nigerians, well, when you look at the population, I remember when I wanted to start the business, I got a lot of people trying to discourage me, telling me that we don't have this reading culture, Nigerians don't read and all that. But surprisingly, when you look at the population of Nigeria, the little percentage that read, there are quite a lot. And those that really do have this passion for reading, they find you from everywhere. I've got people from Maiduguri, Calabar, they try to reach you. So yes, they do read, but then you look at it now, the Nigerian, the typical buying power of the average Nigerian, how much do they earn? How much are they going to spend, So they buy, yes, the book goes, we move, we sell, but not to the level where we'll say, oh, it's mega lucrative. But Nigerians are reading. Those that love reading, we hope to build more of the reading culture.
Are there any challenges?
Challenges? We've had the typical Nigerian challenges, especially for books you import, shipping costs, getting the books here on time, and then trying to cost the books. By the time you put in shipping and the money you use in sourcing them and all that, sometimes the books the prices tend to go a bit above what the average Nigerian. So we're always trying to find that balance. Is quite challenging, trying to find that balance and to get these books to those who will read them. It's a copyright issue. Books come out, and while you're even discussing the book, or before you finish discussing the book, you get someone saying, oh, I have the PDF version, or someone is asking about a particular book, and they say, oh, don't worry, I'll send you the PDF version of that book. First and foremost, for the authors and the publishers, right? That's very, very, it totally kills their work. It does not encourage our publishers, does not encourage our authors to to bring out more books, and it also kills the business for us.
She speaks on African storyline and how to get the younger generation to read indigenous literature.
I guess when it comes to reconnecting to a large extent, more like the classics, more books from the classics, like the Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, the Cyprian Equacies, but I think they connect, if you're looking at connecting children, the younger generation to the past, to our culture, I think those books come in more than the new generation books, the books that are being published today. Although, yes, there's still quite a few that connect. But then when we even look at the young generation now, I said students do come in looking for books to read and all that. Unfortunately, they come in, they are not, it's like we have a lot of work to do in encouraging them to connect, to even pick interest in our books. That's the African books by African authors, both the old authors and the new ones, because they tend to move towards the foreign books. Most times, 90% of the youths that come in are looking at self-help books, how to quickly make it, the motivational books, business books. When we were growing up, not only I remember Gods Are Not to Blame, not only do you read this book, you discuss it, you go for plays and all that, people act them out, so it takes them back, appreciating that time of, and it's this culture that defines who we are today. So it's not just, it's to get these kids to, okay, you people are reading this book, you're not just reading it with the sole aim of passing, there's a bigger purpose towards it, and it's connecting to the culture. To have more options between schools, African plays and all that. If we can bring all that back together, it will really go a long way.
Arts composition, driven by passion to ensure African literary works are made available to the readers.
Hawa Sidi Aliyu, a graduate of law from the University of Lagos, is a Niger State-born entrepreneur. She ran a pharmaceutical company, New City Gate Pharmacy, for 8 years, has practiced as a legal consultant to Yokoko Nigeria Limited, a multi-conglomerate, for 4 years. In 2017, a passion for reading and promoting the culture of reading led her to establishing a bookstore and library, Adams Pages, where she has, over a period of 3 years, hosted book readings, literary events, and has collaborated with non-governmental organizations to organize book drives for donation of books to the less privileged, ensuring that as many children as possible get access to good books.
Conflict provides crucial tension in any story and drives the narrative forward. Our literary device this week is conflict.
Conflict is usually the heart of the story and revolves around the main character. Conflict plays out between the protagonist, that is, the main character, the antagonist, the opposing force, but can occur in many different forms. In literature,
Conflict refers to the or forces involved. Conflict is a major literary element of narrative or dramatic structure that creates challenges